Welcome back to North Node Astrology. Today we have Alexis, her chart reading for March 15th, 1990 at 10:31 p.m. in Santa Monica, California. That puts her rising sign in Scorpio, and Scorpio is ruled by Mars and Pluto. Mars and Pluto being in her 12th house in Scorpio, and Mars being in her third house in Aquarius. The first house sets the entire chart. This is our personality, our mask, what we show the world. The people that generally don't know us well will see this. And for a lot of people, this can actually seem kind of thin if you know somebody. But this is also the way, we begin new. This is our early childhood and how we approach the world. Her first house continues on into Sagittarius, so there's a bit of a been there, done that. People might think that she has an affinity for language. There may be a little bit of a business language going on here because this is Scorpio. First house does start in Scorpio. And that may be filled out in the rest of the chart. Okay. Second house begins in Sagittarius. The second house is about resources and our self-esteem and our concepts about material possessions and material security. So there is a progression here, a want for expansion, which is essentially what Sagittarius does. And also the ruling planet of Jupiter does expansion, although the majority of it is Capricorn. So there is a definite business and a structure element here in the second house. Also with Uranus, Neptune, and Saturn here, there are very powerful forces going on with her self-esteem and material security and her values in that realm. The second house has a basis in Taurus, so it always takes time. So with Uranus here, there is Uranus shakes things up. He sends lightning bolts into things that aren't balanced, that aren't solid, aren't pure. He innovates, and there's also a technology element that is involved with Uranus always, and mass communication with it also. Neptune also being in Capricorn. Neptune is our ideals and our hopes and dreams. Neptune tends to make things a little foggy sometimes. It can blur the details about what's going on, but that is our way to tap into the divine, or the bottomless of the divine. Uranus is much more structured, even though he shakes things up. He creates new paradigms, but Neptune is bottomless. There's no end to it. And with Neptune, there's also possibility of substance issues, or there may be the way to tap into that security, or there might have actually looks like Alexis might actually want to be in some sort of higher learning or some kind of mind expansion substance business, possibly. With Saturn here, anything Saturn touches, he focuses. He's like a lens. He also makes you pay into a long-term savings account. He doesn't let you pull out. So most people spend their first 30 years trying to run away from Saturn, and then the next 30 years running towards him. So until anyone is 30, they have a bit of trouble with Saturn. They might seek without authority or structure or control. And conversely, they might also believe that they are the control, they are the authority, in wherever the placement is. And Saturn is at home in Capricorn. He rules Capricorn. So there is a very large business presence in her mind, especially being a Scorpio rising sign, and with the moon in Scorpio and Pluto also. There is a very present business feel about the chart, and I would suspect about Alexis in general. Saturn can split things up. He will give us what we want. He will let us split things up. He will let us focus ourselves. But he might focus things much farther than we expect sometimes. From time to time, it will, instead of being an authority, we will tend to use Saturn as a laser to focus in on one specific thing. And after anything that doesn't meet that specific criteria, it goes out the window. So whether it's business or friends or your daily life or the way you communicate or who you give your heart to or how you feel about yourself or how you improve, it doesn't matter. Saturn is our way of large growth in our lives. So becoming that authority for ourselves is the definite way to do this. In the second house, there's an added long, very heavy, slow-moving train here. Saturn slows that second house down quite a bit, but with that, once the self-esteem and the security and the ideas about those things are set, then they are very solid. With the natal Saturn at 23 degrees of Capricorn, the Saturn return that Alexis got in January, or it started to come in several months in the later months of 2019, and it definitely became a theme in February, March. But the Pluto-Saturn conjunction at 20 degrees of Capricorn, and that's only a 3-degree separation there, that very much burned that angle in, and I suspect there was lots of transformation there. I would definitely like to get back with the chart owner about that and ask them what was going on then. Might put something in the comments or do an addendum later on. It's up to her. On to the third house. Third house is our communication, our mindset, and like the structure of our mind. And this is whether we are writing or speaking, or even if we're a musician. This is how we're gonna come across, or how we're structured. Again, we're starting in here in Capricorn and continuing on in Aquarius. Mars and Venus here in Aquarius, and also the north node of the moon. I'm going to wait until I get to the south node of the moon in Leo before I go into the nodes and how that works. So, Mars is the warrior. He's what we go after. For feminine personalities, Mars is something that is sought in a partner, or something that is sought in the world, typically. And Venus energies are what is projected, as opposed to more masculine energies, where Mars is what they project and Venus is what they want to attract. So with Mars and Venus here, both in the third house, there is a lot of communication going on. It's sought and brought in. In Aquarius, though, Mars has a hard time in Aquarius. The best description I've ever heard about that is Mars in Aquarius is it's like an alien spacecraft. It knows what it wants to find. It's going to zoom around and find these subjects that it wants to communicate with, or make contact with, and pick them up. And it might be very warm, but Aquarius is about connection, disconnection. It's about moving, traveling in parallel with someone or something. Again, Aquarius is ruled by Uranus and Saturn. So again, we have another bit of a business feel here again. Because Mars is the warrior. He wants to have a battle plan. And Aquarius, there is structure in Aquarius. It's the traditional ruler is Saturn before Uranus was discovered. And it's difficult to break out of the box, to have a battle plan. Like, okay, our job is to not think like we've thought before. Like, okay, well, how do we do that? Well, Venus here in the third house in Aquarius might go along in parallel, might like to communicate with people who are intelligent, people who possibly work in IT, or people who work with technologies in general, and be at home with communicating possibly in an odd sort of way, or other people might think it's odd, and being definitely driven to do so. Without having a house that begins or ends in Aquarius, and also its opposite sign of Leo, third and the ninth house. Third house is communication, and ninth house is about mind expansion and philosophy. They're referred to as being intercepted in astrology, and the way to get through that is by leaning into the planets that rule the signs. So Aquarius is ruled by Uranus and Saturn. So seeking out the communication about those material security needs is going to open that up, is going to allow Alexis to understand herself and how to communicate. Although Mercury is the focal point of the third house, and we'll get to that actually in the next house. So, and I'll go back to the intercepted Leo when I get there. The fourth house, which is home, private life, family, our psychological foundations. This could also be, like the house that we grew up in, and whether it's the house that we create for ourselves or the house we grew up in. There's all of the signs can mean many different things. In Pisces, there's no boundary, there's no end to Pisces. It's the last sign of the zodiac. It's the all-encompassing. There's a lot going on in Pisces. It bridges worlds. It's where magic comes from. It's also the sign that is ruled by Neptune, and Neptune is in the second house in Capricorn. So again, we have the ideals of business coming into the fourth house. With Mercury and the Sun here, there's an emotionality to Pisces. Pisces is all the waters. It is a mutable sign, which means it can move around, do whatever it needs to do. The foundation of the fourth house is Cancer, which is the cardinal energy of emotion, of emotional connection, and the home, and how we nurture each other. With the Sun and Mercury here, the association that Alexis has, I imagine, she associates herself with a communicator about the home, about caring, about nurturing. And all of the signs and planets are always about transmit and receive. So she wants people in her life that do that, and she wants to create that life for herself so that other people can come in, so that they can communicate about whatever. Pisces is boundless and bottomless. So the communication is definitely focused by her Saturn, and is also influenced by Pluto and her moon in Scorpio, and I will get to that. So there's a very nurturing aspect, but there's also a very self-identification with being a communicator, which is not necessarily usual for a fourth house sun, or even someone with Mercury in the fourth house. They would much more consider themselves talking about home or family or things of that nature. But with the sun here this close to Mercury, identifying as a communicator is definitely good. Moving on to the fifth house. Fifth house is creativity and recreation, entertainment, pleasure, romance, children. Most of the things that people associate with what they just call life. Everything else is work. So life, whether it's being in nature or being at home, relaxing, and a little Netflix and chill or whatever that might be, that's encompassed in the fifth house. So starting in Aries, Aries is ruled by Mars. So there might actually, I'm going to go out on a limb here and say she might actually like science fiction. Mars being the driver here of Aries, and it being in the sign of Aquarius, or possibly strange entertainment or things that are not usual to other people, but possibly different types of, even though this is kind of pulling Venus in, and I generally wouldn't do this in Mars, but or in Aries, but possibly different sorts of love stories, or people who move along in parallel with one another for those entertainments, and she might try to do that. Aries is a very direct sign. It rules our identity, so there might be another association here with media and communication, even though this is a sign of Aries. The fifth house, its foundation is Leo, with the sun in the fourth house. Entertainment is most definitely, probably she likes to be at home, either to entertain or have that entertainment brought to her in the home in some sort of way. The sixth house is our daily life, our work. This is our pets, this is our routines, this is our health and nutrition, this is how we improve things on a daily basis. The sixth house also governs our service to individuals. So it's back to work, and it begins at the 29th degree of Aries. So there is a very directness about her daily life, although continuing on in Taurus, again, it's back to those themes of material security and self-esteem. This is also how she builds her self-esteem, is with her daily improvement. Although the sixth house for Alexis is ruled by Mars, because again, Aries and Mars, the majority of this is Taurus, and Taurus is ruled by Venus. And we're back to communication. So her communication daily is the thing, and her improvement on those things is what brings her that grounded, those self-esteem values, and that material security that she needs. The seventh house is partnerships. It's also, alliances and legal matters, and this is the house of marriage. This is also the house of open enemies, anybody that we have quarrels with. So starting in Taurus, there is a grounded directness with Taurus. It's the element of Taurus is gold. And so anything that you have in your hand that is valuable to you is what Taurus is about. Taurus, they know that they're correct, whether they are or not. And but again, it's that constant slow motion forward that is the signature for Taurus. And continuing on into Gemini for the seventh house, there's a lot of communication going on. It's also about, Gemini is also about the mind, and it's also about things that we pair together, peanut butter and jelly, or a yin and yang, or, hot and sour soup, or, things of that nature that are two things inside one thing. So the pairing of Gemini, and this is also the Gemini inside ourselves, the two pieces of ourself inside ourself, and those relationships, they can be with anything. It doesn't have to be just with people. This can be with vehicles. Gemini also rules, and I guess I should have left this for the 8th house, but I'm already talking about it. So it rules close distance. It also rules our personal transits, and skateboards, cars, motorcycles, boats, but personal transportation. So there might be a lot of short trips in her daily life about these business endeavors. Moving on to the 8th house. The 8th house is about renewal and sex and rebirth and transformation and deep experiences with others. How we can plunge into ourselves and come out as something new, how we rebirth. So with Jupiter here, anything Jupiter touches, he expands, he makes it large, makes a lot of things. So there's a lot of emotion here. Jupiter in Cancer, and with Chiron there is difficulty. Chiron is, in mythology, he's the wounded healer. He is able to heal others, but not able to heal himself. Chiron being shaped like a key, it can open doors. This is our way of healing others. So we have to take the key, put it in the lock, turn the lock, push the door open. And it always requires direct action. In the sign of Cancer here in the 8th house, there may be a fear of transformation or fear of opening up. Scorpio is the foundation for the 8th house. And here in the watery sign of Cancer, with Jupiter, with so much emotion going on, but also starting in the sign of Gemini, there's communication about this. So, Cancer is also ruled by the moon, and the moon in Scorpio in the 12th house. There's a lot of emotion here. There's a lot of letting go. There might be a fight to let it go, or the emotions might be suppressed, and I'll get into that in the 12th house. But through Alexis's emotions, through her transformations, through going into those financial partnerships, is also ruled by Scorpio. Trust. So whoever she trusts to communicate with, whoever she trusts her emotions with, there was probably a damage early on with that. Two of the three portions of the chart I always see as childhood wounds are Chiron, Lilith, and Saturn. And Saturn is possible, trouble with authority, but Chiron is always a wounding. But the way that we heal others through Chiron is always stunning and powerful. Moving on to the 9th house. This is the foundation of the house of Sagittarius. So the search for meaning, higher education, mind expansion, philosophy, far travel, things of the unknown. This is the house of the been there, done that, got the t-shirt. Beginning in Cancer, there's a little bit of emotion about this, but not a lot. Majority of it is about Leo, about the inner fire that sparks us all. So we've got the foundation of mutable fire here in Sagittarius as the foundation, with Leo, fixed fire on top of it. And this is the foundation of the evolution for Alexis here, for her life. The south node of the moon in Vedic astrology, or in Indian astrology, is referred to as Ketu, the tail of a dragon. he just follows along. This is things that we were either good at in previous lives, or things we're good at in our current life, or things we just fall into. So being thinking of herself as a philosopher, or maybe generating that power in herself to charge her Mars up through her Sun, through that fourth house, so that she can shine, might be a good ability. But Leo is intercepted here. There's no grounding of any of the houses, so it may be difficult for her to understand where she is, or where she can spread that love and that sunshine through her philosophy, even to herself. The evolution there, the north node of the moon being in Aquarius in the third house. The north node is referred to as Rahu. He's the head of a dragon. He just eats. He goes after it. This is he's a subconscious drive that we have that none of us can stop. In Aquarius, she wants to reform communication, but so she wants to change things. This is about, speaking up. This is about owning her own voice, feeling good about it, and being able to drive into groups. Leo is the sign of ourselves, of our inner fire, inner spark, that sunshine that we all have inside of us. And Aquarius is about the collective. So, a chain is a bunch of individual links, and they all look similar, but they're all completely different. And Leo is the individual links, and Aquarius is the chain itself, the whole chain. So knowing where her philosophies lie for herself helps her push into going in parallel with the collective. The sign of Leo is ruled by the sun. So in order to open up this ninth house so that she can get a grab on these philosophies and have that as her foundation, is by communicating in her home. Back to that sign of Pisces. Just talking about whatever's going on in the home and the business in the home, possibly. Although Uranus is not in the fourth and Saturn's not there either, but the Neptune there in Capricorn kind of pulls the business into the home. And Leos are good at business. They are salesmen. And that might be the philosophy of sales there, to at least to sell yourself to yourself at a minimum. Moving on to the 10th house, which is our fame, how we're known to people, our career, people that come to guide us. I suspect there have been lots of Virgos in Alexis's life, and so people see her as a service. People see her serving. They see her always improving. There might be a little bit of a purity. That rising sign of Scorpio might hide a lot of things, but the things that we do and the things that we say is not necessarily the things that people know us for. In Virgo is ruled by Mercury. So we're back to the communication about the home again. All right. The 11th house is group involvements, our collective endeavors, our friendships, humanitarian ideals, how we're aware of global, awareness and how we see ourselves in a collective. There's, with all of the other business, there may be some legality going on here, because Libra rules the courts, and Saturn, is exalted in Libra, even though he's in the second house in Capricorn. But with two air signs here, the foundation of the 11th house is Aquarius, and that's where Alexis's north node is. And the sign of Libra is essentially the house that's built over the top of that foundation. So there's balance, there is relationship, there is Also, there's communication here. There's partnership. So her partners may have come from business, from the collective, and they might be a little strange. But she likes that. She enjoys that. She's seeking it and feels that for herself and communicates it. And with Libra being ruled by Venus and Venus being in the third house, there's another pullback to that communication. The 12th house begins in Libra, the 29th degree. So it starts off about balance and justice and partnership, and then continues on into Scorpio. Scorpio is about, again, those renewal types of subjects. But 12th house here is service to humanity. It's self-transcendence, it's self-sacrifice, how we retreat from the world. But it's also how magic comes into our life. The foundation of the 12th house is Pisces. So we're having the home here be the foundation of how she transforms with Lilith here and the moon and Pluto in the 12th house. The 12th house is also repressed parts of ourselves. Pluto is the co-ruler of Scorpio and with Mars. And in Scorpio, in the 12th house, Pluto has a lot of power. There's a lot going on. There is depth here. There is possibility for boundless rebirthing and letting go, which is what the 12th house is about. But there's also, in the 12th house, there's resistance to it. It doesn't necessarily always want to go. It doesn't always want to happen. And Scorpio doesn't necessarily like to show what's going on. They like to show people what they think they need to see as opposed to what's really going on. There is subterfuge going on with Scorpio. Not that there is any deception going on, but actually that's a little bit more about Sagittarius. I'm a rising Sagittarius, and when I was younger, yeah, I did have those issues. But Pluto here is power. It's also about fears. So Alexis does have power about business, but it might be suppressed. Her Pluto is retrograde, so there's a rolling back of this. So leaning into those business partnerships and maybe knowing what to let go of when those partnerships or when that business or when those emotions or when those things are dying and when they need to be let go of, there may be a resistance to letting go of them. And the moon here is a repression of emotions. Scorpios, a lot of them have trouble with that. Few of them really know how to get into their emotions. And even when they do, other people don't think they do. So really communicating about emotions, about, the 8th house with Jupiter there's lots of emotion there in Cancer. Let those emotions come. Let them come. It will open up and transform any of those partnerships or any of those deep experiences that you have about that. Lilith in mythology was Adam's first wife. She was created as an equal and was not thought to be a good partner for Adam. He wanted someone that was subservient to him, so Lilith wandered off and did her own thing. This is where we rebel. So Lilith is also a part of us that was either taken away or something we never had. So there may not have been business partnerships or depth or, trust is also heavily involved with Scorpio or Pluto or the 8th house, any of those things about trust also. So repressed trust, not trusting people and not trusting who she communicates, all of the emotions that she has to people, that may be also a bit of a trouble. But the conjunctions that happened in Scorpio at the end of last year, in addition to the north and the south nodes of the moon right now, are in Taurus. North node is in Taurus. So the decisions and focus in Alexis' life for now are about relationships. Anything that is of actual value in Uranus, in Taurus. With Uranus there currently in Taurus, there's definitely mass communication going involved, but it's also wanting to break down and innovate and break out. And Taurus doesn't necessarily like that. He wants to move ahead at a steady pace, at a slow and steady pace, and Uranus wants to break out and be new. The South Node currently being in her first house that's foundational. So who Alexis projects herself to be is the foundation. So making sure that she knows who to trust, and that that certain relationships are not as deep as she might think they are. The South Node, there's always a little bit of delusion going on. In Western astrology, the North Node is thought of as being Gemini, and the South Node is thought of being Sagittarius. And with the signs having just come out, with the nodes having just come out of those signs, there may still be some momentum of that. There may still be some belief that just because she's in business with somebody, everything is okay, or because the contract looks okay, it's fine because it has been before, or if there is any kind of, sexual encounter with anyone that she's been had, whether married or otherwise, long-term commitments of various types. Contracts can always be amended by either party. So that brings us back around to the first house, and that is the end of what I got here. Alexis, I hope you enjoyed this. I hope others that may be listening and get some more understanding of astrology and ourselves. I always do when I do these readings for people. So I can be contacted on Facebook through North Node Astrology, or even through my TikTok. It's also North Node Astrology. I've got some videos up there. Some of them are about astrology, and some of them are about my life, my person. Things have been going on with me for the last several months. But thank you, everybody, again, and see you later.